There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com.
Big news is on the way. 2 brand new sales shows and 2 classic shows are returning to the experience this week. Sign up for our mailing list to learn more.
All right, folks, it looks like I may be live. We're hoping so. Welcome to the first episode of the Dan Wickline Show. This is our inaugural rollout here. I am your host, George Clooney. Yeah, the pandemic's been hell. So, what is the Dan Wickline Show? God, if I know. I mean, I'm just figuring this out as I go along. But the idea here is that we're going to talk comics, TV, movies, and how they all tie together. We'll cover the latest news and information and go from there. So I hope you come along for the ride and we'll have some fun. Now, some of you may wonder, well, why the hell is this guy on my screen? Most of the people I know think of that anyway. Well, I have been writing comic books for about 20 years. I've written for Top Cow, Image, Shadowline. Yes, they are 3 separate things. I've also been with IDW. I worked on the 30 Days of Night series. I've worked on Zenoscope books for Grim Fairy Tales, Sinbad. I've also done a lot of stuff for Dynamite in their Dynamite Books section with writing for Vampirella, Purgatory. And I've done some TV work. I wrote an episode of Metal Hurlant Chronicles and did some script doctoring for them. So I've got a little bit of a background, but basically my approach to looking at things is from a writer's point of view. That's who I am. That's what I do. So when a new trailer comes out, a new show is announced, stuff like that, that's how I look at it, whether it's the Marvel Universe, the Star Wars Universe, the DCEU, or anything in between. I look at it from a writer's point of view. Now, if I seem a bit squirrely, I've got a pinched nerve in my neck, and it's trying to get that worked out, but we'll keep going. Wasn't going to miss my own show or have a fill-in guest because it probably would have been Paul's story, and he would just try to take over anyway. So we got some news coming in today. It's been a relatively light news week for genre-related stuff. I mean, we had the news that there's going to be a spinoff of the Nancy Drew series called Tom Swift, and that Geordie LaForge actor LeVar Burton is going to be playing the AI in the series, which is a major part of the character of Tom Swift. And so that's going to be cool to have LeVar Burton's voice regularly. I'm still hoping he's going to end up being the permanent host of Jeopardy, because I really can't think of a better person except for maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson that I would like to see on Jeopardy. Because you want it to be somebody that when they give you the answer, you feel that they actually knew what the answer was. It shouldn't just be somebody reading the card. And yeah, LeVar Burton or bust. I like that. Now, that's one bit of news. Another bit of news, which I thought was interesting, has to do with the sequel for Knives Out. Now, I am a big Knives Out fan. I really enjoyed the movie. It was one of my favorites of that year. I'm looking forward to the 2 planned sequels. I mean, Netflix just basically backed up a truck full of money to Rian Johnson, Daniel Craig, and their producing partner. More power to them, too. I mean, $450 million. That's a nice haul if you can get it. I would definitely be working on that. But the announced Dave Bautista, who, of course, worked with Daniel Craig once before on the movie Spectre. He played Jinx opposite of James Bond. And Edward Norton, the original Incredible Hulk for Marvel. So the two of them will be joining the series. And at this point, I think Rian Johnson really needs to come out and tell us the title of the movie. I mean, he's far enough along that he's casting, means he's probably already got a script. So what's the title? We're not going to keep calling it the Knives Out sequel. I know it's not going to be called Knives Out 2 Murder Spree Boogaloo. And I don't want to call it the Untitled Benoit Blanc sequel because that just sounds like it's a wine tasting. So, Ryan, come out, tell us the name of the movie so that we can refer to it properly, okay? Now, before I move into what I think is going to be the big topic of the episode, I need to move this over. Knives Out 2, the sequel. That's like Airplane, yeah. Knives Out 2, the sequel. More Knives Out. Knives Out 2, Much Pointier. There are a lot of good titles you could go with there, but I'm hoping it's something completely different. And they do it kind of like the James Bond stuff or the Agatha Christie movies where they all have, different names, like the Hercule Poirot movies. Isn't that a tough name? Murder on the Orient Express, Death on the Nile. You've got all those films that she did, or books she did, make great movies. So hopefully he's going to follow that because he does seem to be doing an Agatha Christie style murder mystery setup, also with the big, huge cast. So he seems to be going back to that playbook, though, with casting Marvel actors. He had Chris Evans in the first one. That worked out pretty well. So you got both Bautista and Norton. So you got two. So he's doubling up for the sequel, which means the third one will probably have Robert Downey Jr., Tom Holland, and Karen Gillan. So we'll have three in the third one. That's my guess. Okay. I am told that we are going to go commercial free. And since more people tend to come into the front of the show, I'm just going to throw this out there. We would like you to follow us on Instagram. We're trying to promote the experience through the Instagram. And that's at _EXP1. So you can follow us over there. There'll be images posted, stuff like that. I don't get Instagram. I have Instagram. I don't get it other than a picture posting place, which I do photography, so I understand it from that point of view. But I don't get it from a promotional point of view, but we've got one, and you should follow it. At _EXP1. So join us there. Now, the big news this week has to be Venom. The Venom 2 trailer dropped, or Venom, Let There Be Carnage, dropped, and really surprised a lot of people. I know there was rumors it was coming out, but it seemed a little early to me. There, of course, were people like, well, they announced this movie a long time ago, and we're wondering when the trailer's going to come out. It's been a long, maybe they're going to move it, maybe they're going to get. No. There's just no need to push these trailers out so early. I mean, you're building up hype for people to go to the theater again. So this is, and they say very clearly in the trailer, this will only be in theaters. And that's not necessarily true. This will only be in theaters in the beginning. Eventually, you're going to get it on home video. It's going to be on these streaming services. But they want you to get back in the theaters. And I'm going to tell you the truth. I want you to get back in the theaters because there is nothing like seeing a movie in a theater. It is so much better. You just look at Avengers Endgame. The big fight with Thanos, and Cap picks up the hammer. He picks up Mjolnir. How awesome was that? But wasn't it better live in a packed theater where the entire place goes nuts? Or when the portals open and you hear on your left? That is an experience you get only in a movie theater. You're not going to get that on your couch. You're not going to get that sitting, at your computer or laying in bed watching it on the big TV. That's something you only get when you're in a theater with 300 other fans and people lose their minds. And when people start screaming, you start screaming. And, Cap grabbed that hammer, and I teared. And I think just about everybody in the theater did too, because that was such an awesome experience. And it wouldn't have been as powerful at home. So that's, I am all for the push to get people back in the theater. If you have been vaccinated and, you follow the safety cautions, I don't see why we won't be. Most likely the first film I'll go back for will be Black Widow. I haven't seen anything that's got me so excited I want to get to the theater. And Black Widow will be available on streaming, but I'm going to go see that one in the theater. So hopefully you'll join me. We'll maybe if we get a big enough audience, we can pick a date. And if you guys are out here in Southern California, we can pick a theater and just get a big old group to go. That would be a lot of fun. But all right, let's go on to Venom. Now, at first, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the previous film because it gets kind of knocked. Hey, Nick, good to see you. The previous Venom film got kind of knocked. And I'll say it flat out. It is not brilliant. It is not. The problem is nowadays, spoilers for Venom #1. If you haven't seen Venom #1, this is going to be my recommendation at this point, is watch it. Because it's a lot of fun. And the biggest question I had going into the first Venom movie was, how are they going to divorce the character from Spider-Man? Because that's kind of the trick, is that they didn't have Spider-Man. It was going to be Venom by himself. And the Venom we know has got the big white spider on his chest because originally he was from Secret Wars. He was an alien parasite that Spider-Man found on the Battle World or whatever the planet was that the Beyonder had taken them to. And we had this new alien costume, and it led into one of the biggest creations of the 80s, character-wise. Can you believe that was the 80s? We're talking about, I look at these characters like Venom and Carnage, and all I can think of is, well, they're not that old. They're newer characters. They're 30, 40 years old. That's ridiculous. My God, I feel old. Well, the film, like I said, it gets kind of knocked. Now, the critics hated it. I think it got like a 29 on Rotten Tomatoes with like over 350 reviews. But the audience score was above 80, like 81%, with like 25,000 ratings. And it brought in $850 million, which, for a film that only cost about $100 million, that's pretty good. If every dollar you spent, you made $8 back, I think you'd be happy. J.D. Smith says, I loved Carnage during the first 3 issue appearance. Other than that, I'm not a big fan of the character. And yeah, I think this actually might make people a fan of the character. I've never been a huge Carnage fan. Serial killers don't tend to be favorites. I mean, there's Dexter, of course, but Dexter had we followed him, we got to know him, and that's the key. I think Woody Harrelson. We know Woody Harrelson can play a killer. I mean, you look at Natural Born Killers. So this is, I look forward to seeing what he does with this character. I cringed a little bit at his appearance in the first movie, not so much because of his acting. His dialogue was a little over the top, a little on the nose. And also, the hair was so bad. It was like a live-action Sideshow Bob from Simpsons. And they went, oh, this is going to be Carnage. And my thought was, oh, no, I'm out. But the trailer shows him with a much better haircut. And I know visually you have to get past that, but when that's the first thing you see, oof. JD says, I was hoping for either Walter Goggin or Jackie Earle Haley. Goggin would have been interesting. Goggin is really good at chewing the scenery. And Jackie Earle Haley, I mean, just his portrayal of Rorschach was really good. But my favorite performance of his in the last decade or so was on the ABC TV series Human Target, where he played Guerrero, who was just this scary little guy. That if you haven't watched Human Target, that's a good show to go back and pick up on. It's probably on one of the streaming services, and it's fun. It didn't get the run it should have. Mark Paul Valley was fine as help me out. What's Human Target's real name? Well, he was great as the Human Target. Anyway, I'm getting off topic, but yeah, Jackie Earle Haley would have been great. He was also, Kyle says he was really good in Preacher as well, and he was great in Preacher. So, but I think Harrelson's going to be fine. Yeah, Haley would have been an interesting choice, and probably physically a little closer. But I'm good with Woody. I think Woody's really proven himself. You look at the True Detective series, that was just so much fun, the two of them. And I don't think the show ever really got back to the height of that first season with Harrelson and McConaughey. But yeah, that's pretty spectacular. And by the way, yeah, please hit the like and subscribe buttons. Let me remind you, we got that rolling across the screen here. I just saw that. So like, subscribe would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so I was really pleased with how they divorced Venom from Spider-Man by making it, by embracing the alien side of it. And again, spoilers if you haven't seen the first movie, you really should. But they kind of divorced it by the concept is that this deep space probe sent by the Life Foundation, which is a comic thing, there's Carlton Drake and the Life Foundation are from the comics, and they sent out a deep space probe to look for, other places that could support Earth or support life. They discover these symbiotes, and they head back with 4 samples. And one of them gets loose on the way back and causes the ship to crash. The other 3 head for the Life Foundation, while the 4th one kind of makes its own way there, which was kind of interesting because he could have just hitched a ride with one of the people going to the Life Foundation. Really there was a side plot that really didn't go anywhere. Now that I'm looking back, I sat down last night and I rewatched the movie. And there was a lot of it that, yeah, now that I think about it, the whole subplot of him jumping from person to person to person and finding a way, it was neat to watch, but it didn't really add anything because the whole thing was it got to the same place. I have to think about that. But I think Tom Hardy did a good job as Eddie Brock, who is obsessed with Carlton Drake of the Life Foundation, who's played by Riz Ahmed. And so much so that he sacrifices his relationship with his fiancée, Annie, which is Michelle Williams, costs them both their jobs. And we start the movie that way. When he gets pulled back in by one of the scientists from the Life Foundation who's worried about what Drake is doing, he goes in and he ends up seeing a homeless person he's familiar with, tries to help them escape. They've been merged with a symbiote. It hooks up. So that's how Brock ends up with the Venom. From that point on, it becomes there's this odd comedic connection, which I find really fascinating. Because the voice of Venom is just Tom Hardy's voice modulated. So basically, he's doing a one-man show with two voices. It's like he's being a ventriloquist. And they're definitely playing up on that. In the new trailer, we get to see this whole routine where Venom is making Eddie breakfast and singing Let's Call the Whole Thing Off, and which is a perfect song because it's about this odd couple who are trying to make a life together. Well, that's Eddie and Venom. Now, according to Andy Serkis, who is going to be directing the film, he did this kind of a commentary track on it, and he said that let's see, I got it here. The film is set about a year and a half after the first one, so Brock and Venom have really spent time together, and he's still annoying him. So at that point, how Eddie is not just screaming, I don't know, but you see the whole thing with all the breakfast being made. So they're going to play up the humor again, and they didn't do it so much in the first one that it was distracting. The comedic beats were actually well done. That's one of the things I liked about it. The comedic beats really worked in the movie. And the other thing was the action was really, really good. So to me, it's not a surprise that we're getting a sequel. Sony is desperate to make their Spider-Verse work. You know, they did really well with Into the Spider-Verse, but they don't want to just do animated. They want to make live action movies because that's where the money is. I mean, as good as Into the Spider-Verse was, it's never going to make Avengers Endgame money because not enough people will go to an animated film. It's just that simple. No matter how good it is, there are people who won't go because it's animated. So they're really going to push this. So Venom would have had to been absolutely horrible for them not to at least try to make a sequel. And the fact that it made $850 million and got good fan reaction. Again, the critics just hated it. And I get it. There are problems. There are moments in it. But overall, if it was part of the MCU, and of course it's not, but if it was part of the MCU, I would put it at the equivalent of some of the lower end Marvel movies. Would you watch it in place of Captain Marvel? Or would you watch it in place of the Incredible Hulk? Or would you choose it over Thor the Dark World? Well, I think a lot of people would pick Venom over Thor the Dark World. I would put it in that category, in that area. It's not Captain America Civil War. It's not Winter Soldier. It's not Doctor Strange. It's not in that range. It's closer to the bottom end of, but that's still better than a lot of the films that we get nowadays. Would you want, I would take it over Mortal Kombat. And I enjoyed Mortal Kombat, the new Mortal Kombat movie. I didn't love it. I hope they make a sequel because I thought the characters were interesting enough and the setup was interesting enough that I would sit through another one. But there wasn't a, oh my God, this is awesome feel to it either. So now, one of the things I did really enjoy about the film was the concept of the multiple symbiotes and how they each had different colors. And I thought that was really great. But it's also one of the things that bugged me about the film is the fact that the symbiote that Venom ended up fighting was Riot. And Riot is gray, dark gray, and Venom is black. So you had a blue symbiote, you had a yellow symbiote that they could have gone with, but instead they put him up against this grayish silver symbiote. So all the fight scenes, they looked very similar. The only way you could really tell is the shape of the head. Venom's was a little more normal shaped, and Riot's head looked more like a tilted football with big eyes, but the eyes weren't the same. So the design for Riot was so similar in color-wise to Venom, which I know they're going to be. But you had two other color choices you could have went with, and they stuck with the silver gray. Made it really hard, and then they fought at night. So it did make it difficult to see, which may have worked in their favor. If it's not that clear to see, then you don't have to spend extra money on the special effects, making it as clear as possible. But I digress. So yeah, I really enjoyed the first movie enough that, like I said, I rewatched it last night, and I honestly think I liked it more the second time I watched it than the first time. Could have done without the mid-credit scene, but that is the setup. We all knew that it was coming, that Carnage was coming, that we would get to Carnage, which that's another pet peeve of mine when it comes to these movies, is that a lot of these writers feel the need to rush, and fans feel like a need to rush. I've been collecting comics since 1975. My first comic was a Captain America that my uncle bought me from a 7-Eleven when he was on his way over, just so he had a gift to give me, because he always showed up with a gift, and I was 5 years old. Well, he showed up with a Captain America comic. He had a Nick Fury for my brother, and my brother never read it, so I ended up with 2 comics. But I started collecting shortly after that. I loved it. I loved the whole thing. So for me, comics have this huge, rich history, and I want to see all of it. I want to see the time where it's the Fantastic Four. I don't want to rush. I don't want to rush through the original X-Men right to the new X-Men, because I want to see the time where it's Beast and Angel and Iceman and Cyclops and Jean Grey. I'd like to see that era. But everybody wants the Wolverine, Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler era because it's the more modern. But I want to see that growth. Captain America, we got the first Avenger movie, then we got Winter Soldier, and everybody immediately started talking about, is he going to become the new Captain America? When's he going to become the new Captain? When's Falcon going to become the new Captain America? It's like we've got 2 movies with Cap and Avengers. Can we have this Cap for a while? And, sure enough, here we are a couple movies later, and we're already looking at a new Captain America. Well, we had Steve Rogers as Captain America, mostly. I mean, we had little moments where he became Nomad and stuff like that. But since 1930, whatever, I don't know off the top of my head when he was created. I know Simon and Kirby, when they did it, it was in I want to say the 30s. It was before Hitler, or before World War II really got rolling. So it would have been the end of 1930s. But we have all these years of these characters, and modern day audiences and a lot of the modern day writers want to just jump to the good stuff, or to the popular stuff. They did it with the Spider-Man films. I mean, Sam Raimi was going great. He used Green Goblin in the first movie. He used Doc Ock in the second movie. He wanted to use Sandman in the third movie, and Sony pushed to get Venom because of the popularity of Venom. Well, that's pretty much what killed that franchise, was rushing to Venom and splitting the focus and forcing the character in when it really didn't make a lot of sense. So JD asked, do you think with the MCU, the major X-Men, Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean, and Beast should get an intro movie before a full X-Men movie? There's part of me that doesn't want the X-Men in the MCU because they take up so much of the oxygen. That said, we're going to get them. I'd like to see them introduced slowly. I would like to see, do I think each one needs an individual film? That's a good question. I don't know if all of them work well enough on their own. Wolverine, of course, can carry his own film. A couple of them could. I never quite felt that Gambit could carry his own film. I think set up in an X-Men movie, then spun off, possibly. But yeah, Wolverine could carry his own movie. I don't think we'll get individual films for them. We might get them introduced in another film, but I think overall, when we get that first look at the X-Men, it's going to be in an X-Men movie. I think we'll be hinted at, or they'll be introduced somewhere else, but I don't think we'll get the individual characters. Like, there won't be a Cyclops movie, which Cyclops is my favorite X-Men. Absolutely would love to see Cyclops get his own movie, especially if Gail Simone got to write it. But no, I don't think we're going to get a bunch of individual movies. Imagine an Alpha Flight movie introducing MCU's Wolverine. I do love Alpha Flight. My worry, though, is that, again, people will want... I mean, don't they have like a brand new Alpha Flight that has John Walker on it? It's like, you're going to give me the original Alpha Flight? You're going to give me Vindicator and Box and Shaman, not Wendigo, Snowbird, Walter Ling. Yeah. Was he Sasquatch? Yeah, Sasquatch. Are you going to give me those guys? Absolutely, I'm signing up. But if you're going to give me the modern version, it's like, well, that's not really Alpha Flight to me. So I want to see a guy in a maple leaf costume. I want to see I want to see Shaman. With his bag. I want to see Aurora Northstar. Yeah, I would absolutely love to see an Alpha Flight movie and introducing Wolverine. Or they could do a Wolverine movie that has Alpha Flight in it. How about a Wolverine movie where he's being hunted by Alpha Flight? He's broken out of the experiments are done. He's broken out of the Weapon X program, and they're sent Alpha Flight after him. That could be a fun way to introduce all of that. But, all right. So we are at the halfway point of the show. And again, I promised I would do some ads. So let's talk about our newsletter. So if you guys want to keep in touch with what we are doing here at The Experience, what you ought to do is go to comicshoppingexperience.com. Then once you're there, scroll all the way to the bottom. Just keep scrolling past all the big pictures, all the way to the bottom, and you'll find the place where you can sign up for our mailing list. And we don't send out that many, so you're not going to be swamped. You're not going to be like, oh my God, stop. Nope. Sign up for the mailing list. You'll be getting our notices telling you what's coming on. For instance, yes, go to comicshoppingexperience.com to sign up. For instance, tonight, after this show, will be the Black Comic Universe. Then at 7 o'clock will be Minute to Skim It. And at 8, I'll be back with Kyle Northrup for In Stores This Week, where we will go over all the new books coming out we'll be going through a lot of the new books coming out of this week at the comic shop. There are way many more books than we can cover in a 2-hour time period. We do a good job of it. We cover probably 25 books a week. Yeah, we cover a great many books. Thank you, Kyle. There's Kyle right there. So come on, we're going to talk about the latest Marvel, DC. Kyle is great at getting the indie books. So Scout, Behemoth, Ahoy, he covers all of those. He brings those in. I hit some of the bigger companies. We come in with our lists and we talk about them. So join us at, I think it's 8 o'clock Eastern. I'm a West Coast guy, so it's 5 o'clock for me. And we will be talking new comics for about 2 hours. So join us then. In between, I'll probably get in a nap or a soda or something. But all right. So there's my ad time. JD, I do like the idea of bringing the Alpha Flight into it, though. But thanks for coming around. I see you had to take off, so see you tomorrow. Yeah, and for those of you who are following, we're going to be doing this 3 times a week, Tuesday and Wednesday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll be doing an hour of the Dan Wickline Show, and then on Thursday, we're going to do a late version, which will be 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Now, originally, those were to be kind of a pre-show for whatever Marvel is dropping or DC, or whatever's dropping on Disney Plus. Now, right now, it's the Bad Batch, so we'll be covering the Bad Batch Thursday night. When Loki comes out, that changed things up a little bit. Loki's coming out on Wednesdays, or Tuesday night Wednesdays. So I will probably be talking about Loki on Wednesdays after the fact, maybe a little bit on Tuesdays before, along with whatever the latest news is. So you get an idea of what we're doing here. Also, there is Popco the Writers, which is my show I do with Paul Story and guests as we break down the latest pop culture from a writer's standpoint. There's usually a group of us, whether it's just myself and Paul, or recently we've had Ray Anthony Height, we've had Jim Beard, we've had Andrew Goggin. We get a good number of different people come on the show. Tom Hodges and his wife joined us. And that airs Sunday night on my YouTube channel, and then it re-airs the following Saturday here on The Experience. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about what we saw in the trailer for Venom. Now, the big thing coming up is what we saw in the trailer. Ruben Fleischer has left. Ruben Fleischer was the original director of the movie. And where he did a pretty good job, I think he could have done better. And I think maybe the studio agreed, or, they'd probably tell you that he had other projects he was working on. Anyway, they brought in Andy Serkis, which is a really unique idea. Andy Serkis, if you're not familiar with the name, you've got to be familiar with his work. He played Gollum in the Lord of the Rings movies. He is the quintessential motion capture guy. The gray pajamas with the tennis balls attached to it. He's pretty much the foremost guy on directing and dealing with that. He's become the guy when it comes to motion capture suits. And they brought him in for this. And there is a lot of motion capture with Venom. There's going to be a lot with Carnage. And this isn't his first directorial movie. He did Mowgli, Legend of the Jungle for Netflix, which is like a version of the Jungle Book. It is a version of the Jungle Book. And so he's got that under his belt, but he's been directing motion capture for years. And you listen to this, he did the commentary track over, I believe, on IGN. And he seems so excited about this movie and so into it that it's almost infectious that he really wants this to be a good movie. And I think it's going to be. I think, I look forward to see what he did. And he talked about the fact that in this film, the characters aren't aware of Spider-Man. Now, he doesn't go out and say that Spider-Man doesn't exist in this universe. He says that they're not aware of Spider-Man. Now, if he said that they weren't aware of the Avengers, they were, that would be one thing, because then you have the blip and all these other things that happen. So we know it's not really taking place in that universe. It doesn't mean that there isn't a Spider-Man in this universe. We're not sure how they're going to make that work, because Tom Holland's Spider-Man is supposed to exist in this universe. And we know that Morbius is a spin-off of this universe. He's part of the Venom universe. But in the Morbius trailer, we see that Michael Keaton's in it as Adrian Toomes. And we see a poster for Spider-Man as a murderer. But the poster is the Tobey Maguire version of Spider-Man. So Sony, you got some splaining to do. At some point between this, No Way Home, and whatever else is going on, we're going to have to find out exactly what it is that Sony's doing and how there's this parallel to the MCU. Does Spider-Man suddenly get the ability to cross between the two? Do we get a Tom Holland version over here? Do we end up with a different version? Do we end up with Tobey Maguire back as Spider-Man in this universe? Because in the trailer we see Eddie is working for the Daily Bugle again, and he's doing these interviews with Cletus Cassidy with the idea that the FBI wants him to do these interviews because there's still victims they haven't found yet. And Cassidy wants to talk with Brock, so the FBI is asking Brock to try to, get information from it. But the fact that the Daily Bugle, we see the headline, the masthead for the newspaper, and it's the one from the Tobey Maguire films. So what exactly universe is this? We're still figuring it out. And I wonder if Sony's still figuring it out, or do they know yet? So according to Circus, these characters aren't aware of the MCU characters. Now, this all takes place in San Francisco. So them not knowing about the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man makes sense. But them not knowing about the cosmic stuff, like the blip and aliens invading New York and stuff like that, wouldn't make a lot of sense. So there definitely needs to be some explaining on how that's going to work. We do get, there's been confirmation of a new character. They're bringing the character Shriek in, and it's going to be Naomi Harris. And if you're not familiar with Shriek, that is Frances Barrison, a drug dealer whose severe trauma unlocked her latent mutant powers. So again, we got to figure out, if we're going to have mutants over here, or are they going to change her origin a little bit? But she has sonic blast, flight, and the ability to kind of stoke dark emotions in people. It was a big part of the Maximum Carnage storyline. So she's a big character in the series. And she's been the love interest of Cletus Cassidy for most of the time. So yeah, they're bringing her character in. We also get to meet, there's another actor in there, Stephen Graham. So Naomi Harris is playing Shriek, or Frances Barrison. And Stephen Graham is on board as Detective Mulligan. And he's the guy that looks like his head's about to get bitten off. And he's holding the newspaper and gets all upset. Also, if you look on that, two things on the board behind him in that scene. One is a wanted poster for an E. Larson. It's not spelled like Eric Larson, but it seems like it might be a nod to Larson, who was a Spider-Man writer and artist for a good long time. And the other thing is there's a newspaper stuck to the wall or thing on the back. And it looks like it says, basically mentions the Avengers. Now, it's not that clear. You can see what letters it says would work for Avengers, but I don't think they're going to be that blatantly obvious. But I know a lot of people online are going, oh my God, the Avengers confirmed. Slow your roll. It's a tease, if anything, so don't worry about that. Now, source material here. Again, we are a comic book shop experience network. So let's talk about the comics behind this film. Now, they seem to be pulling from two different arcs. Of course, the Carnage origin story, which took place in Avengers 359 to 361 by David Michelinie and Mark Bagley, one of the gods of the Spider-Man art. Someday I'll explain to my Mount Rushmore of Spider-Man artists. And in that, we see Eddie Brock is in prison. He's sharing a cell with Cletus Cassidy, but he doesn't have Venom at that point, but Venom comes and breaks him out. And when he does so, at the time, he leaves behind part of the Venom symbiote, and that merges with Cassidy to become Carnage. later on it's kind of retconned into that Venom has a certain number of offspring, and that was one of the offsprings left behind. The other symbiotes we get in the Marvel Universe are his other offsprings. I think there ends up being 7 total. So they're pulling from that, and somehow Brock's going to leave part of the symbiote behind, and that's where Carnage will come from. The other thing they seem to be pulling from is Maximum Carnage. Now, that was a 14-part series written by Tom DeFalco, J.M. DeMatteis, Terry Kavanagh, and David Michelini. And this has Spider-Man and Venom and just a huge group of heroes in it, including Captain America, Black Cat, Night Watch, Cloak and Dagger, Iron Fist, Deathlock, Morbius, and Firestar. So the problem is that the only one that Sony has the rights to in all of that, I believe, are Morbius. So they could bring Morbius into it, but there's a lot of heroes. Also, it's Carnage and Shriek teaming up in kind of a natural born killer style spree across the country and start building up all these, getting people to follow Venom or follow Carnage. That's a huge story. Like I said, 14 issues or 14-part series. I can't see them trying to combine Carnage's origin story and Maximum Carnage into one movie. They could build up to a certain point and then carry it over to a third film. And Tom Hardy is under contract for 3. So he's got another movie on his contract. So that's a possibility. But I think what they'll do is they'll kind of pare it down and just pull elements from the two and give us a rendition of that. So it's not going to be a straight adaptation of Maximum Carnage, nor will it be a straight adaptation of his origin, but they'll pull elements from that and give us Let There Be Carnage, which will make Kyle happy because Kyle doesn't like it if they take the actual name of a story and then don't give us that exact story. So if they said Maximum Carnage, then we would need to get, if it was called Venom Maximum Carnage, then we would need to get that story. Let There Be Carnage has never been a comic, so it can be what it wants. Fair enough. All right. Let me give you some... Yep. Kyle says that is a correct representation of his feelings. And he and I have had a talk about it, and I get it. I understand. So I think sometimes they just grab cool names and use it, but I get it. All right. Let me give you some recommended reading for Carnage. If you're not familiar with the character and you want to grab some of his bests out there, again, what you want to do is if you don't have you want to go to your local shop, look for these books, ask them for them. If they don't have them, they should be able to try to track them down. A lot of them are in trades, or one of the things is a more recent series, so they could probably help you out. If you don't have a local comic shop, go to the comicshoplocator.com, put in your zip code, and they will tell you where the nearest comic shop is. So that's comicshoplocator.com. All right. So books to look for Carnage. Again, we talked about Maximum Carnage. This would be my first recommendation. For the longest time, this was the Carnage work that everybody recommended. This was the quintessential Carnage. It's been collected multiple times, so you're likely to be able to get a copy of the trade. Your local comic shop probably already has one. So take a look for that. That is the big Carnage story up until the recent one, which will be on the list here too. But that's been the biggie. There's also the main Carnage series from 2010, which was by Zeb Wells and Clayton Crane. Clayton Crane kind of owns this character. He does it very well, and he is actually 3 of my recommendations here. And here we get Carnage up against Spider-Man and Iron Man, plus we get more Shriek and the symbiote Scorn. So that's Carnage from 2010, Zeb Wells, and Clayton Crane. My third recommendation is Carnage USA, again by Wells and Crane. They worked well together in the first one. They came back and did this. And this is what would happen if the Carnage symbiote takes over an entire small town in Colorado. Love that concept, and it's a fun story to read. My fourth recommendation is Crane again, but this time he's joined by Pete Milligan, or Peter Milligan, depending on which way you want to talk about it. Venom versus Carnage, which that's pretty much what this movie's going to be. And while this does pit the 2 biggest symbiotes head-to-head, this is also where we meet Carnage's offspring, Toxin. Now, that's another fun symbiote character. So if you're into the symbiote universe, this is where we meet Toxin. And again, Clayton Crane does such a great job drawing this character. That's why he's on 3 of my 5 recommendations for Carnage. The last one is recent, and it's Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman doing Absolute Carnage. This was a recent run. This is Cassidy returning to the Carnage symbiote. He was away for a while, and he's hunting down anyone who's ever bonded with a symbiote. So this includes Eddie Brock, Peter Parker, and a ton of other people. So this is the one you're going to probably have the easiest chance getting a hold of, maybe even in individual issues or a collected Absolute Carnage. So those are my 5 recommendations. Again, we're on the comic book shopping experience. So go to your local shops, go to comicshoplocator.com and check out the, put in your zip code, find your local comic shop if you don't already have one, and go look for these Carnage books. All right, guys, we're going to be wrapping this up pretty quick. I got a few more minutes here. We'll be back tomorrow at 2 p.m. We'll be here Thursday at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. We'll be here on Thursday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then next week, we have our first possible scheduled guest. And this is for fans of James Bond. A writer I know, Alan Porter, and his wife have recently released the James Bond Lexicon. It's an unofficial look at James Bond, and he's going to come on. They're doing a little tour to promote it. So he and his wife are going to come on, and we're going to talk James Bond. And also, I'm going to get his feelings for the different Bonds, Sean Connery, Daniel Craig, all the ones in between, who his favorite is, and also talk about the original novels by Ian Fleming and the adaptations and original stories being done currently in comics over at Dynamite. Now, there are some of my favorite James Bond stories. I think Dynamite has been doing a wonderful job with James Bond. There's the current James Bond series, James Bond Agent of Spectre, which you should be reading if you're not. And again, if you're going to your comic shop to pick up Carnage, pick up some of the James Bond trades from Dynamite. There's Warren Ellis' work, Benjamin Piercy. I think Christos Gage is currently writing. Great writers are coming in to write James Bond, because who would not want to write James Bond? He's one of those characters. Trust me, if Nick called me right now and said, Dan, what's your Bond story? I'd come up with something, because I'd want to write Bond. So there we go. Check out, we'll be back on, I think that's going to be Wednesday of next week. Other than that, this has been a fun show. The Venom is due out on September 24th. Now, while the odds of Tom Holland's Spider-Man making a crossover is slim, there is that tiny chance. Also keep in mind, like I said earlier, Morbius is set in the same universe and is slated to be released. It got moved up. It was going to be in February. Now it's going to be on January 28th, so it's a little sooner. And, of course, we get Spider-Man No Way Home on December 17th. And with Sony definitely trying to build up their corner of the universe, I would expect that we're going to get some forward movement on that in the next 9 months. We're going to have to. They're going to have to start telling us how Spider-Man fits into their Spider-Man universe. So, all right, guys. Like I said, we're wrapping this up here. I appreciate it. Again, tonight, following right now, in just mere minutes, we're going to be rolling over to the Black Comic Universe. Then at 7 p.m. Eastern, we'll be Minute to Skim It. 8 p.m., I'll be back with Kyle. You'll actually see Kyle on the screen. He'll wave and everything. And we'll be talking new comic shops in stores this week. And that will carry us to the end of the evening. So you get to start and end your experience this week or today with me. Thank you for joining me here on the inaugural episode of the Dan Wickline Show. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. I will see you in a couple hours. Good night.
To be continued. 3 little words that hold the secret to the next great story. 3 words that will thrill you, confound you, give life to new possibilities. Every variation of To Be Continued is a promise of adventure, a promise of excitement, a promise of unseen wonders and unexplored worlds. A promise that every issue you read makes you a part of a never-ending journey, and behind every page there will be an unopened door waiting for you. This story to be continued at your local comic book shop today. Visit ComicShopLocator.com today.